Hello everyone, Father Jeff Lewis here. And last week I began a weekly video series called Saints Marching, during which I tell about a saint of the week each week. I'm selecting some of our lesser known saints in the hope that our knowledge of the saints will be expanded. And our Saints Marching saint of the week this week is Pope Saint Damusus I. His memorial was earlier this week. It was on Monday, on December 11th. He was born in the year 306, just before the Edict of Milan and the legalization of Christianity in the Roman Empire, and he died in the year 384. So he died at age 78, pretty old for that time. Pope Saint Damusus I was already a relatively old man for his era, as I mentioned, in the late Roman Empire. For 60 years, or at 60 years old, he was serving the church in Rome as a deacon. And it was at that age that he was elected the Bishop of Rome, or the Pope. And that happened in the year 366. Now his reign was marked by violence from the very start, not necessarily from persecutions of the Roman Empire, because again, this is after the legalization of Christianity, but the violence comes from another group that decided to elect a different Pope, so infighting amongst the Christians. And sadly, both sides, his side, not at his dictation, but his side of the election, and the other side, they tried to enforce their selections through actual violence. Even though the physical fighting eventually came to an end, Pope Damusus had to struggle with these opponents throughout most of the years of his pontificate. Now, he may not have won the battle directly, so to speak, but he won the war by initiating good works that outlasted his opponents. For example, not only did he call upon Saint Jerome to translate the scriptures from Hebrew and Greek into the spoken language of the people at that time, which is Latin, and this is the version of the Bible called the Latin Vulgate. But that was Pope Saint Damusus who commissioned Saint Jerome for this work. And the Pope also changed the liturgical language of the Church from Greek to Latin, again because that was the spoken language of the empire at that time. So to try to make the encounter with the Lord through word, through celebration of the sacraments, through the liturgy, more accessible to the people of God. Okay, so that was one great project of his, and a fruit of his pontificate. Another thing that he worked to do was to preserve and restore the catacombs, previously the secret worship sites of the Christians back when they had to worship underground. So he preserved them and restored them as they gone into disrepair. But also the graves of the martyrs, and began collecting and preserving the relics of the saints. It is primarily for these two works, his partnership with Saint Jerome on the translation of the Bible and his veneration of the martyrs, that Pope Saint Damusus is revered. But in addition to these two great endeavors, he himself also was a writer, but he did not compose multi-volume treatises like other Christian writers did in his time. Rather, his preference was to write epigrams and verse, or as it were, poetry. So he put to verse short proverbs and other various sayings that captured the essence of what he felt needed to be said. Another great famous saint of our tradition, Saint Ephrem, the deacon of the eastern side of the church, he did much the same. He's a doctor of the church. Most of his writings, and outside of his sermons, are in the form of poetry. Actually, Saint John Paul the Cross as well, much of his teaching was done through poetry. So this is not unheard of, and Saint Damusus I may have been one of the earliest saints to have done this. Anyway, he wrote many epigrams about martyrs and about the other saints, and he also wrote one about himself that he didn't intend this, that would not be humble, but it ends up portraying his humility. We can read this about himself, and we really pick up how much of a humble person he really was, and how much respect he had for the martyrs. Now, near the end of his life, he built a papal crypt for himself in one of the Roman cemeteries, and all that is left of him there is this, the epitaph on the tomb. I, Damusus, wish to be buried here, but I fear to offend the ashes of these holy ones. So even in his thoughts of his own death and where he ought to be laid, he still was venerating the holy martyrs, and he didn't want to somehow supplant them, upstage them, anything like this. And when he died in the year 384, he actually was buried together in the same sarcophagus and the same tomb as his mother and his sister. So this is a little bit about our saint of the week this week, Pope Saint Damusus I. Pope Saint Damusus I, pray for us. Thank you very much for tuning in, and God bless you all.